Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and in this video what I want to do is just demonstrate how you can pass data between HTML files using URL params. One of many ways to pass data around, but generally if you're just sticking, let's say you're purely front end and you're going to two completely different HTML pages, and you don't have a backend to make API calls to, this is probably going to be the way you want to send data back and forth. I can't think of a better way. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's pretend we have two HTML files. So let's actually make them. So let's see here. Touch index.html and index2.html. Okay, so we have the first page, and let's say on the first page we have a form element. We'll just say an input with a type equals text. Okay, and what you want to do is make it where they can click on this link. So we'll have a button and take me to other page. And basically what it'll do is it'll take you to this other page and use the text from this input form. Okay, and again, it doesn't matter where you're getting the data from, whether it's from a full-on form or from somewhere else. Okay, the point is like sending data when you click over to the other page, which is going to be here index2.html. Okay, so first let's just do the JavaScript for this page so I'm just going to do it as a script tag here instead of setting up a whole separate JavaScript file, just for sake of brevity. And essentially what I want to do here, first thing I want to do is want to get that input node into a variable, because I didn't make this a form, so I can't really use a form data object to get the form data. So I'm going to say, hey, const input equals document.querySelector. That's going to help me go grab that input. So I'm going to go grab that input. So now that variable has an input. Okay, and really I don't really need the inputs, like the whole input node. I really just need the value. So what I'll do is I'll just chain off of that and just grab the value, just to, why create extra variables? Okay. Well, actually I'll do it in two steps just to make it clearer. So here we're grabbing the node, and then here I'll create another text called input value, which is going to be the text that's inside that input. So input.value. Okay, cool. And let's just make sure that that works. Okay, and actually, I don't want to do that there because I don't want it to happen until you click the button. So actually what I should do is click get the button first. Const button document.querySelector. Let's grab the button. And then we're going to create an event for the button. So button.add event listener. So when you click on the button, this function will run. Okay, so again, just to put some comments here, I am, selecting the button, adding an event to the button, and then I'm going to move this inside of that event, so because I don't want this to happen until you click the button, so that's going to go in there. So here what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the input, or selecting the input, getting the input's value. Okay, nice. So let's see if that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a console log in here, and I'm going to just console log input value. So the idea is that whatever I typed in the box should be what gets logged. So let's try that out. I'm going to open this up with live server. Okay, and I'm going to move this over to the side, and move this over here to this side, so that way we can see this side by side. I'm going to open up DevTools, to inspect, go to the console. Okay, now if I type in cheese, and I click this button, it should log cheese. And that's exactly what happened. It logged cheese. Okay, good. So we're grabbing that input value successfully. Now what I want to do is send that over to another page. Okay. Now what we can do is we can send user to other page using window.location.href. Okay, essentially this is the window object represents the actual window, this whole browser window. Okay, and what I'm saying is like, hey, the location, so basically what website this browser window should be open to, is going to equal this. And so when I change it, it's actually going to send you to that other page. It's like clicking a link. Okay, so what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna use backtick so that way I can create a dynamic thing. Okay, so I'm gonna say now since this is a file in the same folder, I could just literally write like index2.html. Okay, and that's all well and good, and that'll take me to the other page, cheese. Okay, which it did not, I don't think, did it? Oh, it did, but it's blank. Okay, so let me actually just put something here so we can tell. Okay, h1 other page. Okay, so if I go back here, I type in cheese, I click this button, and see it takes me to that other page. Wonderful. The problem is I want to send it that data cheese, and the problem is anything that's going on in this JavaScript or any JavaScript in any file, like whenever you go to another HTML file, that's a whole new page. It's a whole new context. So all the variables are destroyed. Everything has to be sort of redone. It's a whole new story. Okay. So think of each page as its kind of its own application. So basically, you're shutting down one application and you're opening up another. Okay. So that other application is going to have its own variables, its own functions, its own whatever. But one way you can deliver data to any page is through the URL. Okay, in the URL you can add what's called a query string. Okay, so the syntax for a query string is at the end of any URL you can add a question mark, and then you can add as many values as you want. So you can sit there and say, hey, key, so it's the name of the value, like a variable name, and then value1, whatever the value of that variable is, and I can use an ampersand to add more. So I can be like, okay, key2 equals value2. Okay, wonderful. So I can deliver data that way. Okay, wonderful. So what I can do now is I can say, use a question mark at the end, and then just say, hey, word equals, and then I'll just say the value of word is going to be the input value. Okay, and we'll start with that. Let's just see if that works. So now I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to type in cheese. Okay, and if I say take me to other page, it took me to the other page, and look there, we see the query string at the end of the URL. Okay, again, that's not considered part of the URL, so that's why it still took me to the same place. It's just this thing I can add at the URL that then I can then make use of. Okay, now how do I do that? Okay, so now I'm going to go to this index2 page, and now this page is what's running there when you see other page. So this is where I need to do the JavaScript to go grab that data. Okay, so we'll do another script here. Okay, and so what I need to do is create a URL params object. Okay, so I'm going to say const, URL params equals a new URL searchParams object. Okay, and if I remember right, what I'm supposed to pass here is the URL, and you can always get the current URL of the page by passing in window.location. Okay, I think if I do that, that should work. Okay, and then again, we'll just console log here, URL params. Okay, and see there's a URL params object. Okay, let me just see what methods are on there. Okay, and I should be able to use this get function to get different values. So I can say URL params.get, and since in the URL, the key for that value is word, I should be able to get it using that. So I can say, hey, get me the value of word. And let's see, does the console log it? No. Okay, so I didn't necessarily pass it the right. That means I didn't pass it the right argument over here. So did I have to pass in like the specific URL? href. Let's try that. No. Let me see here. What other methods are in URL params? So if I go in here and I go in the prototype, let me see here. Pen for each has set. Well, when in doubt, use the documentation. URL search params MDN documentation. So I'm going to go over here, double check, am I passing it the right value when I construct it? Okay, so I'm only supposed to pass it the params, the actual query string. Okay. Okay, and then that means I have to construct a URL first, don't I? Okay, which it doesn't want to show me right now. Here we go, URL. And the URL object, yeah, you pass that. And then that should have a value called searchParams. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so basically what you can do is we create a URL object, and the URL object already has the searchParams object nested inside of it. Okay, so let me just, so theoretically I would have to pass the actual, like, just the, question mark, whatever piece into this. But even better, what I can do is I change this into a new URL. Okay, and a new URL object, so we'll log that. So let me just say URL. So let's just log URL. Okay, so you see I have this URL object, and you see like there's the search string. So that's what I would have passed to that search params. But I don't need to because it already creates that object for me. So you see there's this property here called search params. So there's no need for me to do that second step of creating the URL search params object that's already nested in the URL object. So I can just say new URL.searchParams.get word. Okay, and there it is. I get cheese. Okay, because that's what's inside the URL. So it has no idea that the other page ever happened. It just, luckily when we sent it to here, we included that at the end of the URL, so I'm now able to access that. Okay, so that's wonderful. Okay. Now what I can do is I can go in here and let's create like a h2 on the page. And now I can go grab that h2, document dot query selector h2. Okay, let me save that in a variable. So const h2 equals. And then I can sit there and set that h2's inner text dot inner text and make it equal. I'll use backtick so I can use interpolation. And we'll say hello $, and technically it would be this value here. Okay, and there you go, hello cheese. So now if I go back to the other page and I say, hey, Bob, see it says hello Bob. Okay, and again, it doesn't know that the other page ever ran. It just knows that this information was stored in the URL. That's it. Now, what if you want to send a whole lot of information? You could send individual, like, multiple things. I could sit there and say, like, hey, I want to send, hey, the word. I want to, and then do ampersand, so that separates a second value. And I can say, hey, bread equals Gouda, and just keep adding more and more things, each one separated by this ampersand. Okay, but that might take a while. A trick you can use, so let's say I have this object here, so const obj equals name Alex Merced, age 37. What I can do is I can say here, we'll add another property, and we'll call it Alex equals. And what I can do is I can turn that object into a string. There's a function built into JavaScript called JSON.stringify that'll take a JavaScript object or array and turn it into a JSON string. So I just pass it the obj, and that's going to stringify the object. Okay, so if I will show you what the result is. So if I go back here and we'll say, hey, my name is Alex. Oh, I have to refresh the page. My name is Alex. And you see the URL, I have word, I have bread, and then you see Alex has that JSON string in it. Okay, so now what I should be able to do is I can now grab that JSON string and then turn it back into an object. So if I go back over here, okay, the way I would do that is we can say const obj. I'm going to reconstitute obj and say, hey, I'm going to use URL search params. And I know that the key is Alex because we can see that here. Again, these are things you'd think about ahead of time. You'd be like, okay, hey, I'm planning that these are going to be the labels. Okay, so we're going to say obj equals Alex. And then the thing is that this just gets me back the string. I need to then parse that string. And there's another object, JSON.parse. So if I pass that string to JSON.parse, then that object should be that data. So console log obj, just so you can see that in action. And you see, look, hey, look, there it is. I have this JavaScript object. So I can pass a whole chunk of data as a JSON string between pages using that additional trick. Okay, and this now, couple things. You want to do this with like sensitive data, because what's happening? The sensitive data, anything you're passing data this way, is being shown in the URL. Okay, and again, so someone who's monitoring like internet traffic or has like a Trojan horse on someone's computer that's monitoring their screen, they can see those things. Okay, but this is great when you're just passing simple stuff around, and you really don't want to have to make a whole other route on your back end or have a back end, and you just need to kind of send stuff between pages. Okay, this is a way you can send data back and forth as you travel between different web pages. And again, using the JSON.stringify trick, you can pass large amounts of data without having to necessarily create a separate URL param for each individual value. Okay, it makes it just easier to pass the data around. So hopefully you guys found this useful. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Make sure to subscribe and like the video and leave a comment if you have a question. I'll see y'all later.